And the main thing is that you have a link, you can download image tank. So image tank, you can download, anyone can download and register it, right? To try it. If you have DataGraph licensed on your machine, or you're a DataGraph user, then the plotting action is enabled as well. If you don't have it, then the plotting is disabled, but you don't even have to register. So if you have a DataGraph license on your machine, you download ImageTank, which is imagetank/imagetank.dmg, it is already registered. You don't have to go through a registration step.
Oh, that's an
Works
important point.
immediately.
Okay.
There's no additional thing. It picks up the fact that that machine is registered for DataGraph and uses that. So plotting is enabled, nothing to do. You can just use it.
Great. So David, do you, someone was commenting that this seems similar to the Visit software. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, Visit, I mean, so it's similar. There are a few of these. So this is a data flow environment, or a kind of a pipeline approach, like more raw, like Visit and others. Well, Visit is different. So there's some things like the ParaView that is more of a pipeline on it. I mean, the Visit and those tools, they tend to be, you tend to have to prepare the data quite a bit beforehand. You have to put it in their file format with that setting, and then you have choices to what to do and what channels to draw and how to do that. They don't have a lot of processing in it. So they have similar kind of drawing features in it. They don't have the animation as much as far as I know. I have to admit, I don't know, I don't use those tools. I've seen people use them. I kind of, from what I glanced from just looking at it, the fundamental thing is that they don't do analysis. They don't do a lot of computations in them. It's hard to add to them. What I haven't addressed here is that you can easily add your own. You can embed a Python program here so that you can type in the Python program, and it will, ImageTank will automatically run that for you as part of the pipeline. You can also include C++ or command line utilities and have those run. You can even run those command line utilities on separate machine, on third machine, or sort of other machines. There's a lot of functionality in that way. And I don't think that Visit or ParaView have that as easily. I don't think ParaView has it at all. I think Visit is a little bit harder to build, add your own entries into it.
David, any plan to include Swift command line programs in the future?
I'm fascinated by that. You mean like a playground, a Swift playground?
Yeah.
I am very interested in that.
Okay, great. And then someone said, what is Swift? Good question. For those who don't know Swift, can you?
Swift is so Apple is the main user of the Objective-C, and there was an effort inside Apple to kind of modernize Objective-C, and Swift is the output of that. So Swift is an Apple created product. They have open sourced it, and there's some use of Google and others that are using it, but it's primarily Apple that drives that. And Swift is what they want people to use, sort of recommending people use if they're writing a new like Mac OS or iOS application. I am like a sort of a long-time user of Objective-C, and Swift is still adjusting a little bit and like breaking backwards compatibility. And there's so much code base that I have in Objective-C, and the fact that I use C++ a lot and call C++ from Objective-C, that is much harder to do from Swift. So I'm not switching to Swift for DataGraph or ImageTank, but it certainly is something that Xcode supports. They have a lot of kind of on-the-fly compiling, and I am interested in making it easy to write in Swift actions that you can then call from ImageTank. You can write in actions in C++ that you can call from ImageTank, and I would like to have Swift as another language of that.
And Python, I think, is in image. You have a Python extendability?
I have a Python. If you add a Python module, you can specify in here kind of what inputs you want to hand into the Python, and then what your code, like this is the header block of the Python code. This is the, like if you look at this, like test, you can sort of see that that's the Python function you have to type in. So you can type in your own Python routine. It will get in the test like the numbers from the workspace are handed into a Python routine that I then call.
So there's a question about, and I'm not sure if I exactly understand this, possibility of measuring the size of the rectangular shapes to generate a plot or a table. And if I think maybe that's referring to, sort of actual recognizing and identifying individual shapes. I think that's something you've worked on.
So if you have like, this is the contour, you can do a quantify here. And in the quantify routine, you can include the paths and the, right? And you can see here, this is now breaking out every shape in this into its own little polygon, into a table. So it's a point of Image Tank has a table object, just like DataGraph has, right? But the table, or data frame, or what do you want to call it with it, but rather than being limited just to numbers and text, it can also have points and even little polygons. So if you look at the sort of, you can even take here, and all of this is, I'm gonna make space of this, move back to the figure environment. I'm gonna draw this, and you can sort of see here's a window that might make its way into DataGraph. When I drag in here, I'm not clear what I want to draw. So I can say, I can draw the points in that table, and that would be the point, the center of mass here, or I can drag in and draw the individual shapes in that table. And this one here is this thing here. And you can see here that what is also done in this is it computes the center of mass of every object, it computes the area of every object, the length, and if it's closed or not. Is that that might be what they're asking for?
I think so. Certainly, if whoever asked that question can.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of quantifications of it. If you look at the main action is, once you have an object, you can click the gear menu, and that are actions you can do on that. You can take this, you can like act on that, you can quantify that. There's a lot of kind of standard measurements and surfaces. You can do the volume and the area and so forth. And you can, and this is breaks them down also, and you can do even subsets of that. So this is like a filter where you say, look at this, where the area is bigger than, say, what are the areas typically? They're like, they're tiny. And then you can see here that that's, oh, there's bigger than that. I need to be much smaller than that. Oh, the area is now is negative. You can sort of see that that's, so those are, you get the picture. So this would then be kind of the subset of that, and you can drag that, and I want to use those instead. So these are only the ones that are bigger than a certain, right?
So there's a question about the DataGraph framework. Owen says he uses that heavily in his lab to generate custom software. Out of curiosity, would you have an image tank framework?
So DataGraph is very much kind of as a main compute is things in the main thread, which makes it much easier to do. I mean, DataGraph will do spawn out other tasks and thread some things, but is mainly doing the main thread. So there's a normal, you start it and you end it. Image Tank is not. Image Tank is more event-driven, sort of everything is going on at the same time, and they just have to coordinate how they do things. So it's harder to say like start this and then end this at that point. I'm interested in knowing kind of what things you have in mind, because there's certainly things where there are trigger events that you can run I mean, image tank kind of wants to be the shell, wants to be the drive, like the operating system on it, and you can run other things for it. So you can trigger command line utilities to be run by image tank. There are ways that I can think of to run it from the command line, and I think I did some of that in data tank, like sync points and so forth, but I have not done that yet in image tank.
So
I'm sort of interested about the use case.
we'll do one more question and then we'll go ahead and end the Q&A. Can Swift match Objective-C in terms of performance?
Hard to,
sense of that.
I mean, there's some things that Swift does faster than Objective-C, and you can certainly make you can make benchmark where Swift is outdoing Objective-C, because Objective-C, there's some things that are more dynamic than. So there are cases where Objective-C beats where Swift beats Objective-C. The main thing but of course, reality is that, like in an application like this or DataGraph, the Objective-C code runs in only a fraction of the time is spent in Objective-C code. Like there's Objective-C code running all over the place to do this, but in terms of percentage of the execution time, let's see if I CPU here. So here is image tank. Well, it's actually doing an easy job of like, it's only like 160. Objective-C is doing very little of the heavy lifting. That's C++. And actually, and Metal. This is running on the GPU, this graphic here. So I do extend quite a bit, like in GPU, is do 3D, I do ray tracing, I do all kinds of things on the GPU, and that is performing quite a bit of that. This one, all of the calculations of the contours is C++, and that's where most of the time is spent.
So I guess one final question that we can comment on. When do you plan to have tutorial sessions for image tank? We have not scheduled that yet. We thought this would be a great opportunity to get some interest and just show it off a little bit, and we will work on that. So next month we'll start having some tutorial sessions for image tank, and I think particularly, I don't know if David, if you have any sense of this, but there's probably if there's a particular use case that people have, then that's something that we can, I think try and address. So that's always helpful for us to, if there's a specific analysis that you're doing that you think would be interesting to try an image tank, then contacting us on the help, emailing us. You can, or posting it on our discussion board. You can always go under the help menu from within DataGraph, and that's where you can get a direct access to our email. I don't know if image tank is the same way. If you have an email link under image tank, David.
In here there's a help. In the help, there's not an email. There's no special email for image tank. It sort of really is just help at Visual Data Tools.
Yeah, our general helpline.
That in, and there's the community forum, and that has a bunch of, you can set that up. This is not my password. This is a randomly generated password if you want to sign up for it. Just letting you know, the knowledge base here has a bunch of things, because I'm using it in class. I'm doing a numerical analysis class, and I'm using it to have students do analyze, learning how to do scientific computing, how to analyze it, how to do conversion studies and so forth, all in image tank. So a lot of that is kind of like the examples are about how to embed C++ codes into it, how to call that. And that's something where definitely other use cases would make sense to be added into that.
Yeah, and so these knowledge bases are continually kind of evolving, and there's more information that David's added into the image tank knowledge base. We haven't really pushed the forum yet on image tank, but I think as we get more users, then that will be another way to communicate with us. And the comment on having a module for Kaleidograph, in terms of the data and the plots, one thing that we definitely want to do is be able to make it easy to bring the data into DataGraph. It's often a bit difficult to really have the plots also somehow, get imported with that process, but we certainly can, show you how to make those plots easy in DataGraph. But our focus is on really more importing the data.
Yeah, and
So
those formats, they're not publicly available. They're not publicly sort of described. So you kind of have to go in and sort of do archaeological digs in the file to figure out where the data is and how you can read it. And I'm doing that on DataGraph, and I would like some more sample documents to kind of make sure that it all works in all of the cases. And then it would be the same type of procedure for Kaleidograph. It's like, I want to know, here's the sample file, here's what really is in it, here are the numbers in it, and then I can start digging into kind of where is it, what did they try to do? These formats are often kind of clunky and strange, but I don't want trying to figure out how they broke down their graphing. I would need to know how they think of graphing, and that's very different than what DataGraph does, so it's hard to map that over. And my intention is that you might have the graph printed, you might have the data on a file, and you want to recreate it. Now you can easily sort of see the graph and recreate kind of once you have the data, but the data is the thing that you can't just guess.
Yeah, in fact, that's a good point. Maybe we can end on this for anyone who is in that camp where you have some Kaleidographs or DeltaGraphs files. Particularly DeltaGraph is what we're working on right now. So if you can send some files through the helpline where what the data is in there, so we can validate what we're doing. I mean, I think it will be out in the beta soon, so you can test it and make sure that when you import the file, and importing those files will be just like any other file you can import through DataGraph. You can just drag it and drop it right on the column definition list, and it will import that data. Nothing special there. It should import all the data for you. So I think with that, oh, there's another one from Abel. Yeah, there's a number of programs that are no longer supported, and that is another one. We have not talked about that one yet, but it's a possibility. We can keep that on our radar screen as well. But either way, it's necessary for us to have some files to test where we know the content of them, and that's what we've had a couple of users send us DeltaGraph files to do that. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and end for today. Thanks so much for everyone for all your comments and questions. We'll work on scheduling some tutorial sessions for ImageTank. Also the suggestion to talk about SQL for DataGraph, where we do have some functionality that's been in the beta that is something to get feedback on. That would be good. David, do you have any closing comments?
No, not really. I mean, the main closing comment is that the same way as DataGraph was helped, the development of DataGraph was helped immensely with user feedback and the discussion board. I really am trying to get ImageTank to follow the same path. In some sense, the problem with the Image Data Tank is that it was started when I was a grad student, and it was just me. Then once it was there and worked the way I wanted, I tried to have others use it. And that is a slight problem. It's much better to have user feedback and immediate feedback and kind of question assumptions much earlier in the process. So DataGraph, I worked on it for 3 months before I put it out in 2006. And ImageTank is about 2 years old or something like that. And I have used now with collaborators at UNC quite a bit going through it, and they have been sort of making sure that this is all understandable. And now I'm trying to make it to a much broader audience. And I really want, I mean, to some extent, the same way as Excel is an obvious target for DataGraph, ImageJ is an obvious target for sort of ImageTank. And I want it to be, I mean, it's in public beta. Eventually will be some charge associated with it, but nothing close to the tools that it's competing with. And what it's competing with is like Amira and Imaris and so forth. And they are on the order of 50,000. I'm not at all in that ballpark. And I mean, I will basically be in the DataGraph slightly above, maybe in like, but definitely a reasonable
Yeah,
target.
we will still be thinking about that.
Yeah.
And actually, that brings up another, I think, really interesting or important point to realize about Image Tank is that all of this is being done on laptop computers. So the part of the motivation for this is, not just creating great software, that's obviously part of it, but creating great software that you can do pretty complicated image analysis with, and you don't need to spend $20,000 on an expensive workstation. This is work being done on our laptops and on other researchers' laptops.
And the way that our commitment is sort of to the, I mean, we are both scientists. We are very committed to kind of staying in, like sort of catering to that group. And looking at kind of Amira and Amiris, even though they're sort of old, they're sort of stagnating, they're engineering type software, which is sold to a big license to a professional engineer at a high price. I mean, I have a good friend of mine is making one of those simulation tools, and that's like $100K per year, like to buy, and then $30K per year, because that's how it's used in an engineering firm. I much prefer everyone in the lab has it, is feasible to do, it's not at all expensive, and everyone should use that from the from the education to and up kind of a thing.
So will this be
it's on
compiled?
ARM. Like if it's on ARM M series, yes, it works both on the Intel and the ARM processor.
Yeah, and as does DataGraph. They're both optimized for the ARM, for the M1 chips.
Yeah, we got early access to one of those ARM machines. I think I can say that now. And we made sure that it would work on day one.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great weekend, and let's
save the chat, Pamela. Just before we leave, let's just make sure that we save the chat.
Great, thanks, Stefan. And that is a good question, is to make sure I save the chat, because I don't always remember to do that. Chat save.
And
okay.
By all means, any of these things, when we are asking you for feedback, like please send help. I mean, like Pamela is the first contact on that, and she will forward anything that is Image Tank related, or she will point me to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great.
Yep. Talk to you later.
And I think actually you maybe need to end.
Oh, I do. I need to end?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're the host right now.
You hang up first. Okay.
Okay, so I'll say goodbye first.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.